and feel free to address any of the concerns that were laid out or anything you had to say to the committee. See if that.
Can you all hear me now?
That'll work.
Okay. My name is Jeff Beecraft. I'm the Executive Director for the Alabama Heating, Air, and Refrigeration Board. And if you don't mind, I have a couple board members and my attorney that I would like to introduce. I have Mrs. Susan Bolt back here in the blue. She's our board chairman. She is from Opelika, Alabama. I have Brett Warren. He is our consumer member, and he is from Albertville, Alabama. And Ellen Leonard is our attorney for the board. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna go in a little bit about what we do and what our purpose is, and then I'll get into what
Yes, sir.
you guys have found. Okay, so the main purpose of the board is a consumer protection for substandard installation, service, and repair of heating and air and commercial refrigeration systems. And because that's typically your most expensive appliance in your home, we license heating and HVAC contractors and heating and air contractors here. We have about 4,500 heating and air contractors and 1,500 refrigeration contractors. And most of those refrigeration contractors are also heating and air contractors. So it's 6,000 licenses, but probably about 5,000 licensees. Annually, the board receives about 100 to 150 complaints, sometimes up to 200. But so far this year, we've gotten in about 92 complaints. 69 of those are currently under investigation. Of those 69, I have 50 of them that are under inspection by our compliance officers who go out there and actually do a physical inspection of the home. They are licensed heating and air contractors, and I have 4 of them in the 4 corners of the state. And then the other 19 complaints that we had this year have been handled by the contractor without us having to intervene any further. Additionally, the board offers annual, our contractors are required to have 4 hours of CE annually, and we try to make that easy for our contractors by offering that education to our contractors. And we do that through classes throughout the state, and then we do 2 conferences a year. We did one in Jasper back in March, and we're doing another one in October. We do about 100 to 200 contractors at a time at these conferences. And we have 2 full-time staff members that handle the education portion. And so, and also our education department goes out and inspects our the approved curriculum for our board. So, you know, if Wallace State has a heating and air program, our education inspectors go out there to make sure that the lab and the material that they're teaching is conducive to learning for this field. So with that, I'm going to go into the significant issues that were found by Ms. Kilpatrick. The first one is, the first one I have is that we removed a $50 apprentice charge in our rules and regulations, and that was effective in January of this year. We had revamped the whole entire rule section for our board throughout 2021 and 2022. And I took it out thinking that this legislation that I wanted to introduce for 2023 was going to pass, which would remove the apprentices from our law altogether. So I kind of got ahead of myself. So I filed an emergency rule to go ahead and allow us to accept that money. But as of right now, we haven't taken in any money for that anyway. And then the second finding was a technical error in Section 343126 about our continuing education. That correction was also in the legislation that I wanted to have introduced that we didn't get done, but we'll have that done next year if we can get it passed. And then finally, the Secretary of State's website. And I know this has been a finding prior to 21 and I think maybe before. And we've tried to keep it up to date, but the Secretary of State has since changed their website, and it's a whole lot easier. It's all one place that we update it now. So that's all I've got. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Members? Senator Kelly.
Yeah, I just have a comment. I mean, you mentioned that you pulled the trigger a little early on some things counting on legislation. No matter how great the legislation you think it is or how easy it is, don't count on it being passed till it's passed.
Right, I understand.
Sometimes there's dynamics at force that affect you, that have nothing to do with what you're trying to do or how good it may be.
Right, I understand.
And so just as the saying says, don't count your chickens before they hatch.
Thank you.
Representative Underwood?
Um, I may have more than this one, but I would like to, we look at the big picture, fee structures and number of licensees and, several things we look at. And a lot of mine are financial in nature just because of my background. But the unused funds that you have designated and I'm just going to read from the section here, exclusively for classroom training tools at educational facilities that provide heating and AC and refrigeration curriculums. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
And all that does is it grows your industry and it keeps those who are coming into it to be qualified when it's time. And I don't know if that's for continuing ed or if it's just for the ones coming in, but I want to commend you for what you do with your unused funds. That's good.
It goes to the actual school, to the classroom, for them to buy tape, tools, whatever they want to use it for, and it's issued out in a grant. And we issued out $3,000 this year because we only got 3 grant applications, but we could issue out up to more of that. It just depends on how many applications come in. We're trying to get the word out. This is fairly new. We haven't always been in a position to be able to turn over money to this. It's only been since 2020 that we've actually had money to be able to turn over to that organization.
Well, it's a worthy effort, and in the end, it will get you more qualified people to serve in this industry. And so I just want to commend you for that.
Thank you, sir.
Representative Simpson?
I'm going to continue on the theme today. So tell me if I'm off on these figures. Looks like in fiscal year 2022, you have 6,392 licensees.
Yes.
Okay. You have roughly 1.28 million in receipts.
Correct.
You have roughly about 136 complaints that are filed
In that
fiscal year.
Mhm.
And your salary is $96,000.
That's correct.
Let me follow up on the complaints, and I think I probably know this, but just from the standpoint of asking, does complaints just mean internal complaints? Does that also include lawsuits or?
Okay, so our complaint process is generally gone through the consumer. They would file a complaint with us based on a certain contractor doing work at their home or business, and then we investigate that contractor and that property via inspection to determine if any violations have been made. Now, there are some internal complaints, like unlicensed contractors, but 100% of the complaints that are consumer driven have come in from them contacting us. And we get the word out through other contractors, and then we advertise on the radio. We don't do a whole lot of television advertising, but and then other state agencies like the Home Builders Board and the Plumbers and Gas Fitters Board also that do kind of the same thing. Will also, their people tell them about us. So,
But that total number of complaints includes internal contractor, saying, hey, you need to check out this person as well as a consumer, or is that?
those are all ones that came in from the public.
Okay. And I don't expect you to know this number off the top of your head, but out of those, what percentage of those have a foundation or a finding? Is it 10% of them that you believe that are justified, or 90%, somewhere in between?
Okay, so let me just go back to like this year. So we've had 92 of them come in, and so of the 92, let me go back to my notes. Of the 92, we had 69 of them that were under inspection. Like 19 of them, we determined that it had exceeded the time limit, like they were put in 10 years ago, and we're not going to look at something that's over 3 to 5 years old. So 19 of those kind of dissipated without us looking into them. Of the 69 of them that are currently that are open, the 50 that are inspected, I would guess that almost every time I don't recall this year our guys going out there to a home and not finding something. Now, it has happened in the past, but it's generally probably less than 1 or 2% of the complaints that come in. If we come out there, there's generally something wrong that we're going to find.
Okay. Co-chair.
I'd like to ask some questions about your board. Now, I thought I picked up that Ms. Bolt was here,
Yes, ma'am.
and then I had, was it
Mr. Warren?
Mr. Warren, and was it Owen, or who was the other one?
No, those are the only 2 board members I have at the moment.
Okay, thank you, and thank y'all for coming. Now, I also noticed that your consumer and your contractor representative, those have expired in terms. What's going on with those board appointments?
Okay, so the consumer, I haven't had any. So I make recommendations over to the
Governor?
appointing. Well, I have several different appointing authorities, but
Right, okay.
depending on who it is, I haven't had a consumer that is interested for me to turn over a recommendation yet this year, and he's been expired for quite a while. And as far as the contractor is concerned, I also haven't had another one to refer yet, but I have some that are interested now that I will have sent over for 2024.
Well, I'd like to say that, I'd want to know what your efforts are towards that, and I'd want to make sure that statutorily, that we need to keep these current. So,
Right, I understand, and like with these two here, I actively try to recruit some of them. Right now, I have a hard time with the consumer portion of it. The contractors, I know a lot of them, but the consumer, I'm having difficulty trying to get an appointee. So if y'all know anybody, I'm glad to.
well, I mean, this is a good place. You have a bunch of people listening to these meetings. So a lot of times you've like I said, find somebody in the surrounding areas, the surrounding
They could
counties.
be anywhere in the state as long as they're not a contractor or involved in the industry, and be perfectly good for a consumer seat.
Okay. And your pass-fail rate, I noticed that you had at George Wallace Community College, that, when we looking at percentages, so it may look a little worse than what it is, but what do y'all do to help ensure? I know I've heard the good program of y'all supporting some of the schools, but what else do you do to make sure that schools that are accepting tuition are getting people to be able to pass a professional exam?
So this listing right here that information, I just started collecting the schools that the applicants went to and their score at the end of 2022 and at the beginning of 2023. So these numbers are only for about 7 months in a time frame. So once I can compile a little more data on how many students, because you can see at George Wallace, there's only 5 students that went there. Hopefully over the course of a year or two, I can get like 20 or 25 and get a better figure of what is going on. And at that point, I will send one of my education, investigators out there to see if they need help, if their trainers need training, if what's going on with that. But right now, I'm happy that we're able to give you these numbers, but I don't know that they're necessarily a perfect reflection of what's going on right now.
Well, and just it's my interest that your board review that on a regular basis to aid you in advice and counsel.
Yeah, the whole reason that we're collecting it is so that we can go out to the school and say, listen, this isn't working. What do we need to do to make it better? Or you're not gonna be approved to have your students come take the exam.
Bingo. Thank you.
This for me is in addition to Representative Simpson's matrix that he's tracking. He also did this with 12 employees. And so I think that may come up in some other conversations. And so he had the revenue, the licensees, and the complaints, and all the interactions that go with all that, including multiple HVAC. Well, there's multiple. You said you got multiple
License classes?
Thank you. I couldn't find the word. With 12, does that 12 include you?
Yes.
Yeah. So him plus 11.
Who do you use for legal counsel?
Miss Leonard, she's with the Attorney General's office? Yes, Attorney General's office.
You use the state provided Attorney General's office, correct?
Of course, sir.
You're going to share your Excel spreadsheet with us, I guess, at the end, right? Yeah. Members, any other questions, comments, or concerns? Anybody in the office like to address anything's been said here or anything else dealing with the board? So we appreciate everyone being here, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. You guys have a nice evening.
Thank you. All right. We'll go ahead and start on Liquid Petroleum Gas Board. If you would, let somebody step up and let us know who you are and address the committee. Tell us what you do, and if you want to address any concerns that were in the report or concerns raised by members 2 days ago.
Good afternoon, Chairman, committee members. My name is Raymond Dwayne Whitten. I'm the administrator for the LP Gas Board. I assumed this position in January of this year. So most of these findings, in fact, all of these findings come from prior to me stepping up. I've got 7 of my 8 board members are present, along with my counsel. The 8th would have been here, but he fell ill late yesterday afternoon, so he sends his apologies to the committee.
Yes, sir.
My chairman is Scott Pilgreen, State Fire Marshal. He's ex officio member. Got Rose Johnson, my executive assistant. Vicki Ferguson from the Northwest, board member. He's an industry member. Behind him is Ken Sexton. He's the Southeast board member. He's an industry member. My consumer advocate is Miss Elizabeth Barnett. She's from Tuscaloosa area. Sergeant Jeremy Burkett is the representative from Aaliyah.
We've seen him on TV quite a bit, I think. So good to see you in person.
Behind him on the row over is Ken Coker. He is our Northeast industry board member. Beside him, of course, is Matt Bledsoe, the board attorney. He comes from the Attorney General's office. And the designee from the Public Service Commission is Lindsay Ward.
We get to see her from time to time down here as well. So
Yes, sir. I'd like to address some findings, issues that came up.
Yes, sir.
About encumbrances. Those were due to the past administration's outdated accounting measures. We're going to work closely with the Office of Public Examiners and the Comptroller's Office to ensure that that does not happen and we have a closer estimation in the future. That being said, any money over $200,000 that we collect goes to REACT, which is Research, Education, and Advisory Commission. They do our training for the industry as a whole. They offer classes, pay for code books. In fact, a grant paid for code books to be placed in every permit holder's office in the state. That's their main branch and subsequent branches around. This the money funds training. We offer training testing, which is free from our office. We don't charge any money for testing anybody in the state. This 1 day a week in Prattville, monthly in Coleman, and weekly at our office, also in Montgomery. We did offer training did offer testing in Evergreen, but that has since dwindled because of lack of interest. So.
Okay. Board members, Madam Co-Chair.
It's outstanding. Thank you for all your board members that have taken your time out. We appreciate your time and attention to this so much. I love on page 5 on your examinations that you have there's no fee to take the exam.
Yes, ma'am.
That's a good way to help cure the pipeline if you give everybody every opportunity they can to do business with or to come and be a part of your organization.
Yes, ma'am. We've also offered training and testing at some of the local community colleges that are offering classes in liquefied petroleum.
Thank you very much. I'm satisfied.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
So you'd mentioned on the encumbrances that was the prior
Administrator, yes.
administrator of that.
Yes.
So you're how new in are you?
January 16th.
welcome aboard.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, having fun so far?
It's been a challenge, shall we say.
Well, the best things in life are.
That you are correct.
So I guess my question is, and I think we've talked about this, and because I don't know protocol with those being so understated or encumbrances overstated in prior years. Is there a correction that could or should be made to recapture what was underfunded on those years that it was? Yeah.
When we conduct our legal compliance examination of the Liquefied Petroleum Gas Board, we'll dig into this a little more. And if we find that it was done in any kind of error or anything like that, we have mechanisms to try to see if it can be rectified and paid back. There are also issues with charges that could come, but it'll dig in more with our Liquefied Petroleum legal compliance audit, which digs in more than the sunset review. And that is due
Okay.
to be done soon.
Okay, and that's when those decisions would be made.
Yes, we will follow up on this again when we do that examination.
Yeah, as I didn't know if there was something already in place that said, because of, then here's what the requirements are. There may not be something that's established.
No.
That you will do this or this or this or this. Okay. So that'll be,
It should come
Within a
up
year?
soon. It's due for an examination, and so timing wise, I mean, I hope to start assigning those out pretty soon, like
Okay.
in the next month or so.
yeah, the rough number that I saw when I went through those was somewhere close to a $500,000 number, if I remember right.
Yes, sir. The differences are close to $100,000 in each year that we reported
Right.
in the sunset. Yes.
Yeah, and so for me, that means that the funds would have gone into your training program, which now they're not because of the encumbrances being overstated. And I know that's not you, and I'm not addressing this to you at all. My question is about the protocol for going forward. If that can be made whole, I guess is what I'm asking.
We will look and see and
Okay.
do and explore it deeper when we do
Okay.
that examination.
All right. Very good.
Yes,
Ma'am.
the legal compliance review, does that always follow the sunset review, or are there different time
We
periods that?
like to keep them in sync this year due to some timing issues and then the changeover. I mean, we had to get the sunsets done in time for these hearings to be held. But traditionally and going forward, our plan is to keep those in sync because it just, when the examiners are in there looking at it, it allows them to get a better picture and a more thorough exam when they can do it all at one time. And it's great for our department. It's great for the boards to have it done at one time. And that's always the plan.
So in all of these, whether it's next month or even in September, will all of those boards, commissions have at some point in time over the next, say, 6 months or so, will all of them have a legal compliance review?
We will try. And because we will start the next set of sunsets in October too, and we want to assign those legal compliance and sunsets at the same time with the ones for next session or next year.
Yeah,
And there are a lot on the schedule.
right.
But we are trying to go back. Some of them have already been done, and they're in our review process to come out. And you
Yeah.
guys will get copies of those now when they get released. And going forward, we're going to do them together, but we're going to try when we have time to catch up on the ones that we didn't get to do for this time to get
Okay.
the sunsets out.
But you think, and I'm not holding you to this exact date, you think that whatever legal compliance reviews that will be done, we should have access to those before we come back in a regular session? Is that
I will try.
doable?
Goal.
That can be a goal, but
Yeah, I understand. There are constraints.
I do not want to promise.
No, I understand. I think the committee would appreciate that, having both of those to look at.
We've assigned all the sunsets for this year, and the examiners are wrapping those up. And so that's their next step is to pick back up.
Okay.
And they get a lot of the information when we do the sunset, so they should hopefully move quickly.
Okay, thank you.
So just to dovetail off that just real quick, the protocol is all funds in excess of $200,000 transferred to the research and education fund, like you said.
Yes, sir.
Is that, who set that? Is that
Step by
the
step.
boards, that statute set?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that's a big deal. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Co-Chair.
On your complaints, how many of them have to do with safety?
The majority. Most of my complaints are consumer driven about substandard installations or Some of them are failure to pick up tanks, just time constraints on the gas companies. But the majority of my complaints do stem from faulty installations.
And does LP gas explode?
Yes, ma'am. We had an explosion just yesterday in Leicester that my inspector went to investigate last night.
Any injuries? Can't
Yes,
help but
ma'am.
ask. I'm so sorry.
Minor, hopefully.
All right. Thank you.
Members, any questions, comments, concerns? Anybody else in the audience like to comment? Now's your time. Okay. Listen, I appreciate y'all being here. Thank you for being here in force. And just appreciate your comments, concerns, and information for the committee. Thank y'all.
Sir. Thanks, sir.
Yeah. I agree.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna, we're a little bit ahead. We're not supposed to start till 1:30, and I'm a little skittish about getting going too early because there may be people who are expecting not to start until 1:30. So we're going. I think the letter that was sent out says, be here a little bit early, maybe 15 minutes early. We're going to try to get to about 1:15 or so. And I feel comfortable that even if we were to begin the meeting before the 1:30 time period, that, if there's enough questions and there's still time after that 1:30 original start time, that if somebody makes it up here at 1:31, 1:30, that they could still be a part of this process. So just bear with us just a few minutes, okay?
It's hot.
Very hot.
Mr. Chair, do you find it somewhat ironic that in a room full of politicians, that we're actually ahead of time and there's not a lot of talking going on? Our over efficiency. There you go. Let it be understood that this leadership is ahead of its time.
Right.
Yeah, let's, if you would y'all mind introducing the board and maybe other members that are here, and we'll get started shortly after that.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Co-Chair, and Committee. My name is Charles P. Ryan. I am the Executive Director of the Alabama Board of Funeral Service. Here with us today is our Chair, Mr. Doug Williams from District 4. Our Vice Chair, Ms. Rachel Arrington from District 7. Then we have District 1, Mr. Kenneth Bishop. District 2, Mr. Terry Sorrells. District 3, Mr. Lance Brooks. District 5, Ms. Karen Jones Smith. District 6, Ms. Brianna Collins. District 7, which was Ms. Rachel Arrington. And then we have Consumer Member 1, Mr. Bobby Burke from Newmarket, Alabama. And Consumer Member 2, Ms. Sandra Hill from Prattville, Alabama. Then we have staff, Associate Director of our Funeral Division, Ms. Denise Grogan, and our Associate Director of our new pre-need division, Ms. Laura Sullivan, and our legal counsel from AG's office, Mr. Brendan Smith.
Awesome. Well, perfect timing. Thank y'all for that introduction. Thank y'all for being here. 1:15, so we're going to start the official meeting and hearing. If you would tell us a little bit about the board and maybe address some comments or concerns that you may have heard from Tuesday.
The board is, again, made up of 9 members, 7 professional members from the 7 different congressional districts, and 2 consumer members. 1 consumer member appointed by the Lieutenant Governor, and 1 consumer member appointed by the Speaker of the House. The board is, we regulate the funeral industry in the state. We license funeral directors and embalmers. We license funeral establishments and crematories. And most recently, we taken on from the Department of Insurance will take effective October 1 of this year, where we will begin regulating pre-need funeral service. We have close to 3,000 total licensees. That's establishments and individuals, cremationers, apprentices, that we license every 2 years for some and every year for others. We operate off of a budget of around about 500 plus amount of some thousand a year. Expenditures about 470 a year. We try to be as efficient as we possibly can while actually maintaining our duties to the consumer to protect the consumer's safety and welfare as it relates to the funeral industry in the state. We accept complaints, mostly written complaints, very few, if any, verbal complaints. We go through the complaint process. On average, we have between 50 and 60 complaints a year. Of those, we may end up with actually 5 or 6 that really carry through to a hearing. The rest of them are normally dismissed due to lack of evidence, or sometimes we have found just being the mediator between the consumer and the funeral home helps because of communication and understanding of the process and things that are going on. We work very diligent to make sure that the consumers are protected and their safety is of our utmost concern. Although we're a board that is made up of all funeral professionals, I would say our board understands that the consumer is our ultimate. It's not the industry, but the consumer is our main concern, and to make sure that they are safe. And we also understand that we're one of those that a lot of people do not really know that we exist, but when they find that we are there to help them. When they have a problem, unfortunately, that's most of the time when we hear from them. But we're there to help solve that problem. Because one thing I'm sure everyone here can attest is that one day our services will be needed at some point, just as sure as we live. And we want to make sure that we maintain that level of professionalism to not only for the industry's namesake, but for the state of Alabama, that consumers are protected in this state.
Thank you so much. Members, Representative Simpson.
I just want to commend you, and everybody's talking about the matrix, so I just need some help on some details here.
Okay.
Tell me if I'm wrong on anything. You have 3,476 licenses
Yes.
currently this year, or around that part. You have 858,000 in receipts.
Well, that was that year, because we moved to every 2-year renewal cycle, that number is inflated for that year.
Okay.
Whereas you will see this year, which is not the normal renewal cycle, it's going to be a little bit lower. So that's the reason that number is inflated for that year.
Okay. You have 4 employees.
Correct.
You said y'all have 50 to 60 complaints a year.
Correct.
You do 477 inspections.
Correct.
Okay. Of that, your personnel cost by the time you do personnel and benefits is 286,000. About that.
Yes, sir.
That's including your salary of 88,000.
Yes, sir.
And that's about pretty darn close to 1/3 of what you're only spending 1/3 of what your receipts are to run the way you run it the way you're running it.
Yes, sir.
I think that's outstanding. I think that needs to be commended, that you are being a good steward of the money that you are responsible for. And one other thing, because we're going to start adding this now. Who do you use for your legal counsel?
We use the Alabama's Attorney General's office.
Is that provided to you?
Yes. Is it provided?
Yeah. Is there a fee for that?
It is a fee for that.
How much is that?
It's $150 an hour.
Just a blanket 150 now.
$150 per hour as billable hours.
Do you know how much you spent on that?
On average, in the last 3 years, it's been about 10 to 11,000 per year.
It's a little bit less than 110,000, right?
Yes.
All right. Mr. P. Ryan, wanted to ask you about the pre-need services. Now that is part of the responsibilities that y'all have, do you anticipate the need for additional staff? I know, young lady, I think that you said's here. Do you think there'll be an additional need for staff? I don't know where that's going to fit in, if it's going to be,
There will most definitely be a need for additional staff. As you can see, in the past, it was just myself and Ms. Grogan, who was the associate director for funeral service, that we are the two that handled those complaints and handled those 477 inspections, because we're mandated by law to step foot in every funeral home at least once a year. With the pre-need coming on, that is a detailed auditing process to make sure that the money is where it's supposed to be. It's not being touched too soon, and it's all accounted for so that the consumer's money is protected. So we added Ms. Sullivan, who is the associate director of that division, which she will be doing audits, many audits, and help manage that division. But we would also need to add a accountant, a staff accountant is what we're looking. We possibly may have to add attorney. We're not sure the volume of work as we add this division because we're taking it on from the pre-need department. And we also will probably have to add some auditors. We are not sure the sure number that we would need, but as you know, the Department of Insurance is subsidizing us for 4 years until we can really find out the true numbers and how much revenue we would need to, receipts that we would need to bring in to cover that expense for how many people we will actually need. So yes, we will have to add staff, which means that's going to be expenditures that we're going to have. And we may have to increase fees, and we may have to come up with some other ways to increase a revenue stream to cover the expense. But I preface that by saying this. One thing that I believe in operating is I'm not trying to stockpile or have a coffer. I just want to break even. So whatever it costs us to regulate and ensure that the consumers are protected, that's the only thing that we want to collect. I'm looking for break even. I'm not looking for a coffer. So yes, with that will come those expenditures, and we will know more a year from now the true number of staff that we would need.
I suspect it will take a little while to figure out what the needs will be and what the cost associated that will be. Can you kind of give us an idea? Just, I know there's legislation passed last year, but tell us what all is involved in pre-need and what does that involve?
Pre-need funeral services where a consumer can go in and select their funeral service and pay for it before the time of need. They can go in and make their wishes known to the funeral director of how they would like to see their end-of-life services carried out. That funeral director then, which must have a COA in order, certificate of authority, in order to sell a pre-need first. By having a certificate of authority, that means that money is being audited and overseen by somebody higher level than the funeral home, and which that would be the pre-need division. That person actually pays that money. They may pay it over time. They may pay it in lump sum. The funeral home is required, if they trusting, to put a specific amount into trust, and they may keep up to 20% and 80% in trust. They can choose to trust 100%. Preferably, I think 100% is best because it's not our money until we actually perform the service. But they can trust that up to 80% and keep 20% for administrative duties to maintain those books. That money is placed into a trust, is placed into insurance, and then once it's paid in full, that individual has a contract that reflects that. And then at the time of need, when that person dies, their wishes is on paper and the services has already been paid for. And then that funeral home can go and withdraw that money from trust account or cash in the insurance policy to cover the cost of that services that they have, that individual selected.
And what's the difference in the old burial policies? How does that differ from a pre-need?
And that's a mistake that a lot of people have. They kind of lump pre-need into insurance, and it's not insurance. It's a contract that you have that individual is saying, these are the services that I want. This is the price that I'm agreeing to pay. And then the funeral home is saying that I agree to provide these services that you request for that price. A burial policy covers, a lot of people use the word burial policy. Back in the day, it covered the burial. It was the vault and maybe something else. Nowadays, we have what we call life insurance. Life insurance is a funding vehicle to cover the cost of that. So they can take out a pre-need contract and state that this is their wishes, that the services that they will want like for that price, and they can use their either an insurance policy to cover that pre-need contract, or the money could have been placed into trust, and then the funeral home can withdraw at the time of need. It can be an annuity, it can be surety bonds. It's how they choose, the funeral home chooses their funding vehicle. So insurance is a funding vehicle for that. But the pre-need is just a contract that says, this is what we agreed to.
Okay, members? Yes, ma'am, Ms. Co-Chair.
Thank you so much. First of all, I'd like to sincerely thank your board for the participation and showing here today. We really appreciate them showing up and giving care to this procedure. In your pass-fail rate, only Jefferson State is mentioned. Is that the only educational facility in Alabama offering this course?
That is the only mortuary school in the state of Alabama.
Okay, and what is their normal enrollment, or how many are y'all able to recruit to go through that process? It's about.
I think this last semester, their enrollment was like 90. And that's a mix of online and in-person students. As you can see, the number of exams taken does not reflect the number of people that may have graduated and just have not sitting for the exam yet.
I see.
So you can have 70, 80 people graduated, but the numbers that you see there for their stats are those that actually taken the exam to be licensed.
All right, and now, thank you so much. On your fees and your paperwork requirements, does your board see anything on the horizon on how y'all could lessen the burden of regulation or reduce fees or streamline? I know you have an online renewals, that's good, but is there other things that you're doing to make it easier for people to go into this field of work?
We are actively trying to find, like, even with one of the things that we did, that our board did, the only testing for a national test was through the International Conference of Funeral Service Examining Board, which is the national testing. And we had some that proved a challenge for some applicants. And so our board looked at it, and the law basically said that we had to examine. So we developed our own state exam where that license, if you use that exam, is for Alabama only. But the candidate has the choice. They make the decision what's the best path for them to licensure. And we stress to them, if you're looking to do reciprocity, we highly recommend that you take the conference exam because it is the national recognized exam. However, as many will say, I'm never going to leave Alabama. Well, this might be the path for you, is the Alabama exam, which is less expensive. And we are more focused on the curriculum. Can you recall what you learned in school? And a lot of the people that are not successful with the national board will take our exam. And that has proven here, we started April of last year administering that exam. We have given 51 of those exams in the year's time, and we have an 84% pass rate.
That's excellent. So I appreciate you going forward with that, and that's in line with some of the goals that we're looking for. Glad to hear that.
Senator Kelly?
Yes, sir. Having one college to do the examinations in the state, is it all? How long has it been where you've only had one
Well, the college does not do the examination. The college just has the curriculum and the program.
Okay.
And it has been, we used to have two, Bishop State Community College in Mobile had the program up until 2016, I think. And it closed that program, and that left Jefferson State with the only program in school. I will say, do we need a second program in the state? Yes, we do. However, other states like Georgia has opened up another program, which is right there in Columbus now. We have mortuary schools in Scuba, Mississippi, but we only have that one program, and that one program is 90 students is a lot for that one program.
That's what I was going to inquire about because I don't have a reference to know if that's a lot or not enough, and they can't sustain the program. And so you mentioned Georgia and Mississippi. Students can go there as well.
Correct.
To get, okay.
But we have been, I will say this, I personally have been in conversations with other schools that have considered it. Alabama State has considered it. They have considered reopening Bishop State in Mobile. I have been in conversation with those presidents to show that why do we want them to go to Mississippi or Georgia when they can be trained right here in Alabama? We're about the finest film directors you can find. So I have been in conversations with other schools about that has been considering opening another program.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Have you spoke with, I guess, President Olivier Charles at Bishop State, or has it been before his administration?
It was before his administration. It was the administration directly before his that we were in conversation, because I understand that they're building a new facility where all their allied health programs are going to, and they had stated that they had room in that facility to bring that program back.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted you to encourage you to revisit Bishop State. Thank you.
Okay.
I kind of an off the wall question maybe, but it seems to me in my own, circle of influence or the folks that I know that folks that my father's age, I've seen some of those folks who have recently passed away and seen an uptick in cremations, folks who elect, cremation. Is that just something that I've just noticed here normally? Is that something statewide that's happened or?
No, it's statewide. Some areas is higher than other areas. Our cremation rate is about 38%. That dropped some simply because the death rate went up over the last couple of years. However, we were at like a 42% compared to when you go out west, is 90% out there. However, cremation is on the rise. It is the choice of service that a lot of people are choosing as primary choice. And funeral homes are adjusting to compensate for that. In the sense of more funeral homes are looking at putting in cremation chambers to make sure that we can service the public. But we're also looking to educate the public. Although you may choose to go with cremation, there are ways that you can incorporate into life celebrations and celebrate that person's life and still perform a cremation without having a traditional burial. So as a lot of that is education of the public. I would say Alabama is still very traditional in certain areas, but that is catching on and just teaching them how they can incorporate their traditions with new concepts.
Okay, thank you. Senator Kelly?
One thing just for, and I don't know how this is governed, is the cremation by water or chemical or whatever.
Alkaline hydrolysis.
Yes, sir. Would you expand on that and how you do the oversight of that?
Okay. We have one alkaline hydrolysis chamber here in the state of Alabama, and when that the funeral home has been lockstep with our board, with our agency, as far as putting it into making sure that if there were any new regulations that were needed, that we could address that. But what we found with that process is you get the same product at the end as you would with a traditional heat and flame cremation. Alkaline hydrolysis is heat, water, and chemicals. So basically, you put the body in a vat, and use water and chemicals to dissolve the flesh, which you still left with the same product at the end. So one of the things we did when that first machine came up, we went and watched the process to determine if there was anything that needed to be addressed in our law. And what we found was that it's the same as heat and flame. The end product is the same. The procedure is somewhat the same other than the vehicle in which you're doing it in. So we was like, we categorized it as a form of cremation. And there was no need to address the law. And we just changed a couple of definitions to say the alkaline hydrolysis, this is the definition. And so we regulate it in the same manner as we would heat and flame. Now, they do have to go one step further with alkaline hydrolysis in the sense that they must go to the local municipality and get permission, because that waste is released into the sewer system and goes to the sewer treatment plant. And so they must go get permission from them that they can actually do that. And normally the company that they will buy the machine from would go through all that process, getting all the permits and getting all that clearance. We will have to eventually address one other, that's a new form of disposition that is coming, and that is human remains reduction, basically human composting. That is something that's catching on, that is slowly moving, and other states are beginning to realize that they need to address it in their law before it actually take foothold. But I'm monitoring that to determine when would be the best time for us to really take a look at that and address it.
I want to commend you not only your knowledge that but your progressive thinking and looking at those, even though they're prominence here before they are. And I thank you and your staff to be commended on that, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, questions, comments, or concerns? Yeah. Appreciate the detailed information, and I could probably ask a lot more questions. If my wife was here, she'd come up with a lot more questions than I would, but thank y'all for being here. Thank you for your attentiveness.
I do have one question. What's your background?
I am, I went to University of Mobile Business School. Then I went to Bishop State in Mobile, my alma mater, and I got mortuary degree from there. I started working in the funeral home when I was 15 years old. My background, my mom would tell you that I used to dress my sister up and put her on the coffee table at the age of 5 and played funeral.
Oh, wow. And I just want to make the comment to the board, to the committee. You can see a difference when you have an executive director that has been in the field. You can see a difference in how they perform. They know what they're talking about. They know what they need. The board works together to do some of this stuff. These just run-of-the-mill, like pill mill management systems, they don't have your passion. They don't have your knowledge. They don't have your expertise of the system. And I do want to commend you.
And I would say from my standpoint is I look at it, being in the industry, the actions of one of us cast judgment on all of us. We're all judged by what one funeral director does. So it's my passion to make sure every funeral director does it right, because that's my reputation on the line.
Representative Shedd.
I know I have a concern about for-profit cemeteries, and I know you don't do anything about cemeteries, but would you have any advice to us as legislators